Welcome to Point of View. I'm Grant Mangan. Well, it's a magnificent summer's day down here at New Brighton Beach. Hard to believe that just a kilometre away are the wasteland suburbs of the red zone. Yet both of these areas are part of the Christchurch East electorate. In a moment, I'll be speaking to the new MP for Christchurch East, Poto Williams. But first, reporter Marcus Gibbs looks back at the by-election campaign.
Election night, Poto Williams, Christchurch's newest Labour MP. With the might of the Labour Party machine behind her, Poto won with more than 8,000 votes. But why was a by-election needed? After months of speculation, Leanne Dalzell announced in June she was resigning as MP for Christchurch East, a position she had held since 1996. After 23 years in Parliament, she had decided to seek the Christchurch mayoralty. Her resignation caused a by-election. The media soon started speculating who would fill Leanne Dalzell's shoes, but it wasn't until September, 2 months out from the by-election, that candidates were announced. National had won the party vote at 2011's general election, but Leanne Dalzell had her own strong following in the East. With Leanne no longer seeking the seat, could National make history and win the by-election? The Prime Minister wasn't optimistic.
So the probability of us winning Christchurch East, you've got to say, is very remote. Not because we don't have a good candidate, not because we're not doing enormous things in Christchurch, not because we wouldn't love to hold the seat, but the reality is you'd be bucking a trend in history that no incumbent government's ever bucked.
National chose Matthew Ducey as their candidate. They believed he could win the electorate over. Meanwhile, after a vigorous selection process, Labour chose Poto Williams to try and retain their precious seat. The 51-year-old was selected for her community background. Despite only moving to Christchurch at the start of the year, the party believed she would be a strong advocate for the people of Christchurch East. She also had Leanne Dalzell's support. While National's Matthew Ducey was still busy working at the hospital, Poto Williams didn't waste any time.
Feeling really good, feeling positive, feeling energised, ready for the big job ahead.
The electorate is notorious for low voter turnouts. It wasn't going to be easy to get people into the polling booth.
The challenge for Labour is to not only hold on to the seat, but to actually reach out to people and get them out there to vote so that we get a really good majority.
As soon as she was chosen as the candidate, Poto identified EQC and insurance as issues needing her attention. Other major priorities for Poto were cleaning up New Brighton and sorting out Christchurch's housing woes.
Having enough affordable, appropriate housing, dealing with the escalating rents, dealing with low quality rentals that we've got in the marketplace at the moment.
Soon after Poto made those comments, Labour's annual conference was held in New Brighton to try and boost support for the party's candidate.
So we had about 250, 300 people just invade Christchurch East, and we got a lot of really good canvas data, but more than that, we actually sent a really strong message that, you know, Labour is also standing up for Christchurch East.
David Cunliffe focused on the same three issues as Poto, promising to build 10,000 homes in Christchurch over 4 years if Labour's elected at next year's general elections. He also plans to launch a state-owned insurance company and to clean up New Brighton.
Isn't that fantastic? I mean, that was an amazing announcement, 10,000 homes over 4 years. That's really going to boost the stock of housing that we have in Christchurch, and that's what we need to actually reduce things like the extraordinary rents. We actually need to increase the supply of housing, and we need to provide really decent, warm, affordable housing for those people who currently can't afford to get into their own homes. So I'm really stoked about that policy. I think it's really, really good.
That may have been David Cunliffe's first trip to Christchurch since taking charge of the Labour Party, but it was far from his last. In the lead up to the election, he was here every week. When election night came, the votes came in early. Poto Williams had won the by-election. National's Matthew Ducey came a distant second, more than 4,500 votes behind. When the country's newest MP arrived, a haul of Labour supporters erupted.
I told you if we did what we said we were going to do, worked really hard, we would turn out the voters, and that's certainly come to pass.
There was no time to bask in her success. Poto was at work early Monday morning, ready to get stuck into her new job. Her first plan of action, to start working to help the people she had met during her campaign. They had a wide variety of issues she wanted to help them with.
Everything that we've been saying during the campaign, issues around unaffordable housing, issues around housing that's not appropriate, people still dealing with EQC and insurance.
Later that afternoon, she flew to Wellington to meet the rest of the Labour caucus, something she was looking forward to.
Pretty nervous, really excited, but butterflies in my tummy really, because this is really where the rubber hits the road, and all those weeks of hard work start to pay off. Well, I stepped out of the taxi at the rubber doors to be greeted by Parliamentary Services and one of the whips from the office, and it's extraordinary to go into the foyer there, the beautiful marble floor, up in the open caged lift onto our floor, and actually walk down those beautiful corridors and be presented to my office and to have my name on the door. It's extraordinary.
Well, it's been a year of changes for you. Firstly, I moved to Christchurch for a new job, and within a year, you're New Zealand's newest MP. Was that the plan all along, or was it more a case that you got here and this opportunity presented itself?
Well, it's definitely the second part of that. I came to run a youth service because I have a real affinity for young people, and actually my partner Ken and I were looking for a change of lifestyle as well. I've always been quite involved in community services, and he's been a little unwell, so we were looking for moving to Christchurch. I could use my skills in the community service here, and he could perhaps take a little bit of a back seat and just recover some of his health. But when I got here, of course, the opportunity came up, and a few people spoke to me about putting my name in for selection. I thought, why not? What could possibly happen? The worst thing that could happen is, I wouldn't get selected, but there's an opportunity perhaps to work my way onto the list at some point. But yeah, history, of course, has shown that it took a slightly different direction, and I'm really grateful actually for the advice and support that I got from people who said that I should stand for selection. Really good. I think I do have the right skills at this time for what this electorate needs.
Was politics an important part of your upbringing or your early kind of adult life?
My parents were always very strong Labour supporters. We're very much a Labour household, and what influences your parents influences you by and large. In later life, I guess I'd done a lot of advocacy work, and I have worked a lot with preparing submissions and presenting to select committee, and I have some political friends. I've known people who have had political careers, so I had always sat on the fringes of it, I guess, but have some strong connections into the political life.
So had you thought that at some point in the future you would pursue perhaps becoming an MP, or did this opportunity almost catch you off guard?
Well, my partner Ken said to me a few years ago, you'd make a good politician. No, you're crazy. No, I couldn't do that. But I had conversations with various people about possibly sitting for a community board or council. But I don't know what it was about the conversations that I had here. It did seem to solidify something within me. My stage in life, the children are all fully functioning adults, don't require minimal input required really, and Ken and I are at this stage in our life when we can, well, at least I can offer a lot more to the community, so I think the timing was absolutely right.
So how did your family take the news then that you'd been selected as the Labour candidate? Some of them were a little incredulous that I was even thinking about that. Some actually thought no, that that they had seen that there was potential there. My brother, who's no longer with us, was the political scientist in the family, and we'd had some discussions. It would always, I think in our family, would have been him that took a political role, and he didn't get that opportunity. So perhaps it's a little bit of him rubbing off on me in that regard. Now, you had only recently arrived in the city. Was the fact of your being a recent arrival an issue you had to deal with at all on the campaign Australia?
Initially it was. It was a talking point to start off with, but once people got to meet with me and talk with me and understand the background that I bring, it became less of an issue, and obviously the result proves that it became a non-issue completely by the end of the campaign.
Well, you mentioned the result. Were you surprised by the scale of your success in terms of winning the election so comprehensively?
We were very pleasantly surprised. We had thought if we did everything that we were required to do, we could win. But we had thought it would be it would be positive for us, but not as good a result as we got. I think it's testament to the fact that we had good people on the ground, and that actually we got out in front of an extraordinary amount of people at the end of the day. And within the last 3 weeks, we'd done 100 street corner meetings, for example, and we'd canvassed many thousands of people over the electorate, so we've done an awful lot of work. So in that regard, I think the hard work really paid off. But yes, it was a surprise to actually gain 61% of the vote. Extraordinary.
Jim Anderson was your campaign manager. Did he play a key part in your success?
Absolutely critical that he was leading the campaign. He has run many campaigns in the past successfully. One or two haven't been the highlight of his career, but we were really pleased to be able to give him this one to really put to bed any previous disappointments. He was absolutely critical. He has a system that a model of campaigning requires total dedication. And he said to me if I wasn't exhausted on the Saturday night of the election, I hadn't done enough. So I took that as my benchmark, really. Yeah. Extraordinary man. I'm very grateful to have him lead the campaign.
That sounds like good advice. Has he actually offered you any other advice now that you are the MP?
Yes, you have to understand he's a very seasoned parliamentarian. He knows a lot of people. He's very well networked, very well connected, and we have spent over the course of the last few days probably a couple of hours, half an hour off and on each day. He will just continue to give me, words of advice. He says one of the benefits is that I'm not fresh-faced in terms of being, I'm an older parliamentarian in terms I'm an older person coming with some experience. So the School of Hard Knocks has been part of my journey. So his advice really is about process and about keeping true to my values and making sure I stand up for the things that I really believe in. Yeah, so he has been really great, invaluable.
Well, the election's a week or so ago, so you've actually had your first week in Parliament as an MP. What have your first impressions been?
Well, I stepped out of the taxi at the rubber doors to be greeted by Parliamentary Services and one of the whips from the office, and it's extraordinary to go into the foyer there, the beautiful marble floor, up in the open caged lift onto our floor, and actually walk down those beautiful corridors and be presented to my office and to have my name on the door. It's extraordinary. So, but I have spent some time over the last few days having a bit of an induction process, getting to understand what parliamentary process is like. I've sat in the gallery and watched the proceedings and the debates in the House. I've been able to observe a couple of select committee sittings. So I've had a really great opportunity to kind of learn before I actually fully get engaged in the business of the parliamentary process. Sat at caucus on Tuesday morning. So yes, it's been great. It's been quite a whirlwind, but exciting, very exciting.
Does the induction include the sort of humdrum basic things of, here's your locker, or this is where the toilets are, or those sorts of things, or is it all just marble hallways and glittering chandeliers?
I know. The first port of call was to find out where the bathrooms were and where the kitchen was so I could make a cup of tea. So no, all those things are covered off. And also, you're given part of the induction are the speaker's requirements. So that's a manual that really guides our practice in the house. So that's something that I've been becoming familiar with over the last few days. It's not a huge document, but it's quite complex. So I know that over the fullness of time I'll get to be much more familiar with the proceedings, but it's important to know kind of the key things, what I can and can't do as a parliamentarian. I think there are people in this community who were vulnerable before the quake, whose vulnerability has increased, but there are many other people who normal circumstances would cope very well with what life throws them, who have been thrown into a vulnerability basket because of the quakes. And those are people who are feeling quite distressed that they're not able to affect change or have control. So there's an issue around our general mental well-being in this community, and I think that's something that will come to become more problematic unless we think of some great creative ways to address that.
When will you give your maiden speech in the House, and have you started thinking about what theme or issues you might touch on?
At this stage, indicative only, probably around the end of January. The House starts sitting again, I think, from the 28th, so it'll be sometime around there. I have said that part of my maiden speech will be to pay homage to the people who've held this seat since 1922, and in particular I have to pay special reference to Leanne Dalzell. And I've been looking at her maiden and valedictory speeches as well, because there are the opportunity to continue that legacy is very important to me, but I will also be very strongly talking about my own social service background and the importance of supporting children, supporting young people, and supporting the most vulnerable in our community. So it'll be along those kinds of lines.
Well, you mentioned Leanne. One of her key responsibilities was as recovery spokesperson.
Yeah.
Is the expectation that you will move into that role or pick up that role because you're the MP for Christchurch East?
I think because of my newness to the role, that's the expectation on me will be that the electorate work will become the most important. So I will be dealing with those issues, but on a case-by-case kind of basis. Ruth Dyson will continue to lead the earthquake recovery role along with Clayton Cosgrove, and they have had, many years experience in supporting that particular function. So my role, even though as part of caucus, earthquake is part of my duty, it will definitely be in terms of the day-to-day issues that our electorate bring to us, with a responsibility to support Ruth Dyson in the wider kind of earthquake function.
So what are some of those other issues that are confronting the electorate, or what did you learn through the process of the campaign were issues that people had?
Well, obviously the top ones are EQC insurance and the delay in resolving those, the outstanding issues. Housing, the lack of housing, the affordability or the lack of affordability, the increase in rents, people not having sufficient housing, having to live 2-3 families to a home, and all the social and health implications of that. Lots of people talked about the issue of school closures and mergers and how that's impacted on the community heart. And there are many other things. I think there are people in this community who were vulnerable before the quake, whose vulnerability has increased, but there are many other people who normal circumstances would cope very well with what life throws them, who have been thrown into a vulnerability basket because of the quakes. And those are people who are feeling quite distressed that they're not able to affect change or have control. So there's an issue around our general mental well-being in this community, and I think that's something that will come to become more problematic unless we think of some great creative ways to address that.
Now I know it's obviously still very early days for you, but there's another election coming up, of course, in just a year's time. So Does that put pressure on you to perform to a higher level than perhaps other MPs who are elected in the general election and have 3 years to kind of prove themselves and become a fixture in their electorate? Are you feeling the added pressure of the fact that no sooner have you finished one campaign, a few months' time you'll be cranking up another one?
Well, I don't think it'll be a few months. I don't know that we will actually get out of campaign mode. I think we will have to continue a lot of those activities. We'll have to continue the canvassing, the meetings, the community engagement. It will just become a normal way of being, I think, for the next however long. I mean, who knows when the general election will be, whether it will be sort of earlier in the year than this current election. We're not entirely sure. So in order to be prepared, we have to continue the work that we've done. So some of the team might not be happy to hear that, but we'll give them a break at Christmas, and then I think when we come back post-Christmas, we'll have to be knuckling down and dealing with that. I had made the commitment, the people that I had met on the campaign trail that shared their stories with me, to be dealing with those issues and to be in touch with them before Christmas to start advocating on their behalf. So that's kind of the first job, and that will naturally lead into the other activities that need to happen.
So are there any goals that you've set for yourself at this stage that you would like to see accomplished before the next election?
Well, definitely number one on the list is to actually get back in touch with all those people who had issues that they want us to support them on. So that will be the first thing, to do that before we break for Christmas. There's a few people on that list. I also need to be building relationships with those key people around the city, including councillors, community board members, people from EQC and the Insurance Council, Sarah, for example, continuing to build those relationships. I had always said all through the campaign that my job really is to support the electorate, and each and every one of my constituents who come through the door can be assured that that's what our job is to do. But on top of that, it really is around the activities to ensure we reach as many people as possible. So yeah, lots of canvassing and door knocking, and all that will continue.
Well, you've just been elected to Parliament, though the summer recess for Parliament must begin in about a week's time. So you are going to get a bit of a break from Parliament at least. What have you got planned for your holiday?
Well, we are planning to go up to Auckland to visit family. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law is unwell at the moment and is in Auckland having some treatment. So we're going to be spending at least a week and a half with her during kind of just before Christmas and post-Christmas. So that's probably going to be the most important, just catching up with family. I have a sister in Melbourne too who I wouldn't mind popping over to see. I haven't seen her for a couple of years, and but really it'll be family time. I do need to get into the garden too. I have to say, over the last 3 months it's been a little neglected, so that'll be high on the priority list at some point during this 2 weeks break. So yeah.
Well, let's hope we get some fine weather so you can make the most of it and get back into that garden. Poto Williams, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Grant. It's awesome.
The former MP for this Christchurch East electorate was Leanne Dalzell. Leanne is Christchurch Mayor now, but how is she finding the transition from Parliament to Council Debating Chamber? We'll find out on the next Point of View. Join us then.